Good morning, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So, thank you for joining in on the live stream. Hit the like button when you join in. The algorithm will pick up the video and spread it around for more people to join in on the comment section, which makes the video a lot more fun for the discussion. In this video, I'm going to talk about how it is that people really want the economy to fail. You know, it's something that is so counterintuitive to what you would actually think, because most people, when you ask them, what do you want the economy to do? You would probably hear an answer of, we want it to be successful and, to be profitable and to expand and to do all the things that, would be helpful to our lives. But ultimately, when you think about what it is that they are asking of the Federal Reserve, which, you hear out there is the lowering of interest rates. Like, if we lower interest rates, there will be less pain to the people out there. Like, this is kind of the perception, right? However, in order for the Federal Reserve to be in a position in which that they would want to be lowering interest rates, the economy would have to be failing. Like, if the economy fails, then the Federal Reserve would attempt to try and stimulate the economy by lowering interest rates, which then brings in the idea that that is a good thing for the people, right? Like, the Federal Reserve is creating pain and suffering to the working class, to the people out there with the higher interest rates and, the inflationary scenarios and all this other stuff. And so they're hoping for better interest rates coming into the future with the failure of the economy. Like, I don't get it. Like, to me, this is such a backwards way of thinking. Like, I just can't wrap my head around it. Now, ultimately, when I look at the Federal Reserve and what it is that they're doing, I don't think about it as what they are doing to the person, to the people, or what they're doing to me personally. Like, I don't think that they're putting the interest rates or have the Fed funds rate in the position that they are in so that they could come down and create pain and suffering for Simon. Like, I just don't see it that way. Now, what I do look at is the past monetary policies and what it is that they are trying to do to conduct themselves in order to keep their monetary policy functioning. Listen to this. This is 20 years old, this speech, right? This is coming from Ben Bernanke. I went back and I reviewed some of this just because I really wanted to bring forward the ideas of what it is that the Federal Reserve was experiencing before they hit the lower bound of zero, when they lost their monetary policy. Listen to this. This is how it goes down. I believe that the combination of strong economic fundamentals and policymakers that are attentive to a downside as well as upside risk to inflation makes significant deflation in the United States in the foreseeable future quite unlikely. Right? Now remember, this was in early 2000s. But suppose that, despite all the precautions, deflation were to take hold in the U.S. economy, and moreover, that the Fed's policy instrument, this is really important, the Fed's policy instrument, the Fed funds rate, were to fall to zero. What then? Right? Now think about this. This is the Federal Reserve talking about what it is that they were going to do when deflation was taking hold and the Fed funds rate goes to zero. That's their monetary policy. What happens? They run out of monetary policy. Okay? He goes in. In the remainder of my talk, I will discuss some possible options for stopping a deflation once it has gotten underway. I would emphasize that my comments on this topic are necessarily speculative, as the modern Federal Reserve has never faced this situation, nor has it pre-committed itself formally to any specific course of action should deflation arise. Furthermore, the specific response the Fed would undertake would presumably depend on the number of factors, including its assessment of the whole range of risk to the economy and the complementary policies being undertaken by other parts of the U.S. government. Now think about that for just a second. Right there, he was describing what it would be like if the Federal Reserve ran out of monetary policy, right? The adjusting of interest rates and an inflationary scenario that was falling, right? This is exactly This is exactly what we had experienced during the great financial crisis, right? When inflation fell and the Fed funds rate had gone to zero. Now, remember, this is really interesting to think about because, again, this is Ben Bernanke talking about this back in early 2000s, like 6, 7 years before the great financial crisis. They knew then that they would be running into this moment. They didn't know exactly what it would look like, but they knew that they would have to be considering the situation of a deflationary scenario and the lower bound to zero. All right? Curing deflation, he goes in to talk about. Let me start with some general observations about monetary policy at the zero bound, sweeping under the rug for a moment some technical and operational issues. See, they knew it then. They were like, man, we are sitting in a position in which that we do not have the tools, the resources, or the experience to deal with a deflationary scenario at the lower bound of zero. Right? Remember, this speech was given 6 years before this happened, before the great financial crisis, 6, 7 years. I have mentioned some observers have concluded that when the central bank policy rate falls to zero, its practical minimum, monetary policy loses its ability to further stimulate aggregate demand and the economy. Bang, right there. Once they have hit the lower bound of zero, they are done. They are out of monetary policy. It's no longer effective. Loses its ability to further stimulate aggregate demand and the economy. At a broad conceptual level, and in my view, in practice as well, this conclusion is clearly mistaken. Indeed, under a fiat, that is paper monetary system, money system, a government, in practice with the central bank in cooperation with other agencies, should always be able to generate increased nominal spending and inflation even when the short-term nominal interest rate is at zero. Now he goes into describing quantitative easing. They knew then, 6 years before it happened, that they would be running into a situation during the great financial crisis in which that deflation would be taking hold, right? Prices and the markets and everything would be falling, and they would be at the lower bound of zero, making it very difficult to stimulate the economy. Now, what does he use, right? Now we hear this situation that he was facing, that this is Ben Bernanke was talking about, that they were at the lower bound of zero and that stimulating the economy was not going to be an effective tool by dropping of interest rates. They knew it, but they said that they had other tools. What does he go into to describe? All right, here it goes. The conclusion that deflation is always reversible under a fiat money system follows from basic economic reasonings. Okay, here we go. This is really important to understand. Remember, think about what it is that he was talking about. A little parable may prove useful. Today, an ounce of gold sells for $300 more or less. Now suppose that a modern alchemist solves the subject's oldest problem by finding a way to produce unlimited amounts of new gold at essentially no cost. Moreover, his invention is widely publicized and scientifically verified, and he announces his intentions to begin massive production of gold within days. What would happen to that price of gold? Presumably, the potentially unlimited supply of cheap gold would cause the market price of gold to plummet. Indeed, if the market for gold is in any degree efficient, the price of gold would collapse immediately after the announcement of the inventions, before the alchemist had produced and marketed a single ounce of the yellow metal. You see, this is his plan to deal with a deflationary scenario and the monetary policy being at the lower bound of zero. He describes credible threats. They're jawboning their words, they're signaling their propaganda. All right. What has this got to do with monetary policy? Like gold, U.S. dollars have a value only to the extent that they are strictly limited in supply. But the U.S. government has a technology called a printing press, or today, its electronic equivalent, that allows it to produce as many U.S. dollars as it wishes at essentially no cost. By increasing the numbers of U.S. dollars in circulation, by increasing the numbers of dollars in circulation, or even the credible threatening to do so. The U.S. government can also reduce the value of dollars in terms of goods and services, which is the equivalent to raising the prices in dollars of those goods and services. We conclude that under a paper monetary system or paper money system, a determined government can always generate higher spending and hence positive inflation. Think about quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4 failed to produce the inflationary scenario that the Federal Reserve was looking for, even though they had increased the balance sheet from $850 billion to $4.5 trillion plus, 4.9 or 7 or something like that they had gotten it up to, $4.5 trillion. Right? All this credible threatening to do so, but it failed to create the inflationary scenario that they were looking for. Why? It's because that true money printing of what it is that they were doing did not enter that money into circulation, not during the great financial crisis. See, this is the reason why you have to really understand why it is that we had inflation now, but we didn't get it then, or at least not in the eyes of the Federal Reserve and the way that they are looking at it. It's because that money never really entered circulation. It ended up sitting on the big bank's balance sheet unless it got lent into the system. It didn't start chasing the goods and services. It just sat there in the bank, which doesn't do anything. However, the recent time around, we had stimulus checks at the same time. They had a severing of the supply chain. So all the money printing that was going off gave the people the perception that the inflationary scenario was going to run rampant, and it worked. The severing of the supply chain, the stimulus packages, and the continual belief that there is going to be a return of the supply chain. All these things create the inflationary scenario that the Federal Reserve was looking for, and it had more to do with their words than it did their actions. Think about this. This is what Ben Bernanke was describing, how it is that the Federal Reserve and the government were going to deal with the fact that they had run out of monetary policy, having the Fed funds rate at the lower bound of 0. And what is it that they decided that they were going to do? Use their words, the forward guidance, and the threatening of the money printer. Okay. This is important to understand. And if you don't think that the credible threat theory works, again, this is coming from Clarita, right? Now, I mean, I've gone over this stuff a lot, but it's important because if I keep reiterating it, it'll finally start to sink in for a lot of people out there who still are missing it. I mean, I don't know how many times I go through the comment section of my videos and they have this misguided understanding of what it is that the Federal Reserve is up to. Think about this. This is coming from Clarita, and this is a speech. Hold on, I'll tell you. It was given May 21st, 2020, right? So you think about this. This is right at the beginning of the pandemic. This is all kicking in right now. You know, I mean, you think about it. This was all kicking in right then. Stimulus packages and all kinds of stuff, and everybody thought the world was coming to an end, right? Corporations needed bailed out. Think about during a recession. What is the worst part of a recession? Right? The worst part of a recession is everybody loses their job and the government bails out the corporations. People hate it. Hate that idea that they're bailing out the corporations. But if they didn't do that, everybody would continue to lose their jobs. So they're bailing out the corporations so people can stay employed. Right? This is the whole idea of it. However, that bailing out of the corporations is such a political suicidal position to go into that it makes it very difficult to try and stimulate these corporations or bring them some sort of backing, right? To be able to bail them out without having this, to deal with it, the political fallout from it. However, they have a situation in which that they got bailed out and the government and the Fed hardly had to do anything at all. Listen to this, right? This is talking about the facilities. Now, these are lending facilities that were set up during the pandemic to backstop every corner of the financial market. Now it's under the Federal Reserve System. It's under their section 13.3, right? Now this is the way it goes down and describes. The March 17th, the Federal Reserve Board has announced the establishment of no fewer than 9 facilities to support the flow of credit to households and businesses. These programs are authorized under the emergency lending powers granted to the Fed under Section 13.3 of the Federal Reserve Act and are available only in, quote, unusual and exigent circumstances. Very important to understand. These are not typical tools of the Federal Reserve. When somebody says, what is the Federal Reserve going to do? This is not one of them, because this is not a typical tool for the Federal Reserve. They have to have an unusual and exigent circumstance like the pandemic. Circumstances with the unusual and exigent circumstances and with consent of the Secretary of Treasury. I think you will agree that today we face the circumstances that are both exigent and unusual. These facilities are supported with money invested by the Department of Treasury, drawing on appropriations of more than $450 billion authorized by the Congress in the CARES Act. The specific purpose of investing in the Fed programs is to sustain the flow of credit to households and firms and communities during the coronavirus pandemic. So now the whole idea of this, right, is to make sure that the flow of credit, like the ability for corporations and people and households and all these business to be able to have access to funding, right, to be able to borrow the money. These guys, the Federal Reserve, is setting up funding facilities, meaning that if there is a debt out there that somebody wants, they are going to be there to back it up and buy it, so that the banks would be more willing to lend out, right? That's the idea behind it. Now, with these facilities, we are providing a bridge by stepping in and supporting lending throughout the economy until the recovery takes hold. See what they're trying to do here? They're like, okay, you guys got credit card debts and all that other stuff. We will buy those debts. That's what they are trying to say, right? That we will buy these debts, and you don't have to panic about whether or not you have to, sit on them. These programs are designed to offer a backstop source of funding to private sector, and just the announcement that these backstop facilities would soon be launched appears to have bolstered confidence in the capital markets, allowing many companies to finance themselves privately even before the facilities were up and running. Do you see that? That credible threat alone that they were going to do this brought in the confidence. That's all they needed, was somebody to say, yes, we will be there to buy this corporate debt. And the people said, great, we're going to front run the Fed. And they ran out there and they started buying up corporate debt, and all these corporations were able to fund themselves without the Fed even doing anything. All they had to do was just set it up and say, hey, we're going to do this. But the programs, right, these programs are designed to backstop sources of funding to the private sector, and just the announcements of these backstop facilities would soon be launched appears to have bolstered confidence in the capital market. Just the announcement. Very much like Ben Bernanke talking about the gold machine, right? And what did he say? Oh, how does it go here? By increasing. Where did he say that it was going to be announced? Shoot, I can't read it in here. By increasing the number of U.S. dollars in circulation, or even by credibly threatening to do so, right? Even by credibly threatening to do so, the U.S. government can also reduce the value of dollars in terms of goods and services, which is the equivalent to raising prices in dollars of those goods and services. See, they don't have to do anything. All they have to do is just make sure that the people are convinced that they will, right? And if you have a facility set up that is funded, that has the money, that you are willing to go and do it with, right? If you are willing to go and step up there, it's not an idle threat. It is a credible threat, meaning that they will do it. And because everybody knows it, then they will go out there and start participating in the market as if it has already happened. I just want to keep reiterating this stuff because I know I have a lot of new subscribers who come in and, like I said, they fill the comment section up with a lot of this stuff saying, man, you're wrong about the Fed. And I'm like, no. You're not studying the Fed back long enough. You're not really taking in a lot of the considerations that they had taken in themselves, considering that they were going to be hitting the lower bound of zero, knowing that they were going to have to change the way that they conduct themselves when it comes to monetary policy. Yeah. All right. Let me see. I'm sorry, guys. I just went off for like 20 minutes here. I didn't even read a single comment. Thank you so much for joining in on the live stream. We've got 94 people who have liked the video with 394 people watching. We should have at least 300 likes on this video. Go hit that like button. We'll get the algorithm to pick it up and spread it around a little bit more. Yes, sir. Sex sells, and so does doom and gloom. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I have done very descriptive titles in the past, like, try to be very specific and very descriptive of what it is that I'm going to be talking about within the videos. Nobody watches them, right? Nobody watches. You get like 2, 3, 4,000 views, right? I put a video out that says markets crash and everybody's going to die. It gets 40,000 views, right? So tell me, like, what would you, like, I understand now why it is that news headlines are so sensationalized, because if they didn't do it, nobody would buy their paper. Nobody would look. Right? And it's sad to say it, but that's the case. It's just the way it is. And, I don't like it that way, but I've tested the theory out on it and it just doesn't work. Like you can put descriptive titles and then nobody will watch them. Roofing anytime sucks. Oh man, you're more man than I. Hurting. Okay. I once roofed my own small house in good weather, though it wasn't too bad. All right. People want the dollar to fail because it's inevitable. No, they don't. They don't want the dollar to fail. They don't want the dollar to fail, but they see all the frustrations that they experience with a devaluing dollar, with the fact that there are so many people out there who can, not so many people, there's people out there who really understand how it is that money works, and they can separate themselves from everybody else, right? So you have this huge inequality gap that takes place. And that is also very frustrating for a lot of people out there, as some people work very hard to barely make it, while other people look like they barely do anything at all, and they have the entire world's abundance just flowing to them. Right? And that makes it very frustrating, and people look for excuses and reasonings for that being the case, and they end up blaming a lot on government and the Federal Reserve, or just all kinds of external things out there, not realizing that if they were to truly focus it in on themselves and understand what it is that's happening out there, they have the ability to do the same thing, right? And actually, because of the frustration, you find so many people who don't want to go through that effort, who don't want to put in the hard work and what it takes in order to acquire the assets that would pay them over their life. They don't want to do that. Instead, what they want to do is limit people's ability to do it and make them pay for some kind of entitlement for them or something. I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't understand how it is that people would have that kind of mindset. Right? Like, make it harder to become rich. Why? Why would you do that? Like, I don't understand. Because you don't want to become rich. You don't want to put in the effort. You don't want to do all that, but you want like some kind of benefit from these people who do want to try that. Like, I just don't get it. I just don't understand that, right? To me, watching the separation between the rich and the poor just gives me more ambition to try and become rich, right? I don't like it. It's not like something that I'm like, hey, this is a good thing. I just understand it for what it is, and I don't cast blame, It's just like, it's just what it is, like weather, you don't blame the weather, it's just like, what can you do about it? Nothing. You just deal with it, All right, moving on. Wow, look at all these comments. This is crazy. Okay. Cheers from Romania. Please don't fall into the clickbait trap and follow you equality. Please consider expanding viewership through collaborations. McNeely Ward may be worth it. No, that's cool. Like, I understand the clickbaiting thing is frustrating. Like, I get it. Like, I don't like it, right? And I think I've stated my case on it, and I've proved it to myself. It has to happen. Like, if I want subscriptions, if I want views, if I want the algorithm to spread it around, I have to do it. There's just no other way. Now, I'm not trying to be a fearmonger within the videos. I try to be very straightforward with the information. I try to show you exactly where I'm getting it from. All the stuff that I put into the videos itself is not trying to scare you. Like, I'm not talking about how the New World Order is going to come down and ruin your life. Like, I don't talk that way, right? I try to encourage people to take this information so that they can use it for themselves in the most appropriate fashion they can. There's nothing I can do to tell you what it is that you need to do. Besides, even if I did have the perfect answer for you, you would have to wait for me to give you the perfect answer on how to get out of it too, right? Like, I can't tell you in a single video what it is that you need to go do with your life so that the rest of it is going to end up being so awesome. Right? I mean, it just doesn't work like that. No video, no person, nobody out there, no book, nothing is ever going to do that for you. Right? Everything that you do has to come from internal. You have to absorb the information, find out what it is that's important to you, be honest with yourself, and then go for it, right? But there's nothing out there that is going to be like the best for everybody. Like there's no way that I can come out with a video that says this is how you benefit yourself with this information, because I don't know who you are. I don't know what it is you need. I don't know, like, even if I did, I still probably wouldn't be able to do it. I'm trying to figure out what I need to do for myself, right? And that's where breaking this information down does. Like, I feel very comfortable in understanding where it is that the Federal Reserve is standing and my position in accordance to that. Like, I am very comfortable with that. I don't like the position. I don't like all the stuff that's going on out there or whatever. It doesn't matter what I like. It doesn't matter what I dislike. That part isn't important. What's important is that I understand it and that I am positioning myself for the most appropriate fashion I can. And I think that's what you should do too. And everybody should. All right. I don't hang my fuzzy from the mirror. Okay. All right. The secret to the next 20 years or so is that bonds are going to go completely and utterly to shit. Well, I think there's going to be a problem with the bond market, and I totally agree with you on that there is going to be liquidity crisis things happening. And just by the Treasury even making the announcement that they're going to be there to try and provide liquidity to the bond market is just a sign of it. If you go and just Google corporate bond liquidity issues or something, you'll probably find an insane amount of articles talking about it. Yui, I feel your viewership is what it is because you are doing the right thing. I don't see any clickbait. I'm smart enough to make my own decisions. That's right. Pinch and pennies, I love the name. That's exactly right. Victim mentality will keep you poor. Yes, it will. And that's to be honest, that's actually one of the issues that I've had with my, holy crap, thank you for the $49.50, man. Thank you. I'll go and check that out here in just a second. Wow. Jill, thank you so much. Man, appreciate you too. That is so cool. God, I just forgot what I was trying to say here. But that's one of the reasons, that's one of the things that I know I'm suffer with myself, was the mental blocks that actually comes from being so poor and broke and just like not really doing well throughout life, like all the way up to 40. It takes a serious effort to try and change the way it is that you feel. Like going from scarcity mindset to abundance mindset is very difficult. You can't just switch it, right? You can't just like say, oh no, now I just feel that the world is full of abundance, and it's like that. Subconsciously, you don't believe it, right? So you have to go all the way deep down and you have to find out where it is down in your subconscious, whether it was from childhood trauma impacts or just, conditions of life growing up or just whatever, trauma impacts you've had. That subconscious that is buried down in there, like you can just say it, like you can just force yourself to come right out and say the words, right? The world is full of abundance and it's all going to flow towards me. You can just outwardly say it, but then not believe it on the inside. And if you don't believe it on the inside, then I guarantee you energetic, like the energy that you put out there to the world will recognize that you don't truly feel that the world is full of abundance, and that you do feel that there is scarcity out there and that it's not deserving to you, and the world will not flow that abundance towards you because of the energy that you are feeling and in putting out there. And that's one of the problems with blaming the Federal Reserve or blaming the government or anything out there, is that by putting this external blame out there in the world, you would have the actual belief that you could fix it. All right, that if you fix this external world, my internal world would be awesome. But that's not the way it works. You fix the internal world and the external world becomes better. All right. Thank you so much for that $49.99. That is so cool of you. All right. Brody, see Dillard, because you don't get to choose. A rich person can choose to not spend any money, but a poor person doesn't get to have a say. That's right. If you're going to say stuff like that, say it right, at least in terms is I couldn't care less about it. All right, being focused on your purpose and ambition and learning skills and working is the only sure path out of poverty. I totally agree with that. Okay, I got just a few more minutes left, but Ted, I really agree with that. When you follow your purpose and your passions and you're trying to be useful, helpful, informative, right? You bring this kind of information, you bring this kind of, your skills, you start putting it out there in that fashion, right? That you're trying to provide something useful and good to the world. Then the world wants to reward you for that, right? All right, I had a question about something you mentioned in another video about homers. Oh, I saw you had said this one the other day. In the current environment, because they would almost be moving, most likely be moving. Where the rest of that comment went, sorry. All right. There is no bond liquidity problem. The Fed will buy all the bad bonds back. Well, Dexter, that's like, kind of a common thought coming out of the, a lot of the economists out there and, the perceived idea of what it is that the Federal Reserve is doing. However, they're not going that route. They're quantitative tightening, which means that they're not loading up more of these bad bonds. Now they could, and that could be like, a good guess on what it is that could happen into the future. But as of this exact moment, that is not what they are doing. Right? And they are allowing these bonds to roll off. I mean, even though they reduce the amount that is coming off, they are, corporate bonds are defaulting. I mean, it's not like they're, buying up and bailing out, failing corporations or something. So they're clearing out the bad debt. Like, I know this is really weird to try and understand, but they are actually using the free market to fix the problems that they had of the irrational exuberance. See, if you just allow the interest rates to remain elevated and these corporations have a hard time funding themselves, the ones who are not viable corporations will end up just failing, right? And this is exactly what the Federal Reserve is looking for. In fact, they are looking for unemployment to rise before they start to adjust their interest rates. So in order for unemployment to rise, more corporations would have to fail. So again, like this is not something that the Federal Reserve is looking to reverse. They don't care at this point. As long as unemployment stays low, they're like, let those corporations fail, right? They don't need bailout. It's when unemployment starts to rise that the bailouts will start to happen. Alrighty, guys, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being here. We really had, I think, a lot of really good comments, and I wish I had the ability to go through all these. Invest in chicken and rabbits. They'll keep you fed. I know, I lost a hen last night. And now I'm down to 3 hens. I only have just a few of them. Give me 2 books, names to understand the economy. I'll give you 2 books. Read The Creature from Jekyll Island. That's G. Edward Griffin's The Creature from Jekyll Island. If you want exposure to the Federal Reserve and their devious ways, then definitely follow or read The Creature from Jekyll Island. The other book, Cantillon's Essay on Economic Theory. Right? This is the other one. Now, I left a link to this, the Amazon affiliate link to this, but you don't need to buy this book. You can actually download this PDF from the Mises Institute. So if you just type in Cantillon Essay on Economic Theory, you should be able to find it there on the internet for free. However, you can support the Uneducated Economist by purchasing this book through the Amazon affiliate link. And even if you don't purchase the book, just by clicking on that link, anything you put in your cart after clicking on the link for the next 24 hours, I will also get a little commission from. So you can go and buy whatever it is that you want from Amazon. Just follow that affiliate link first, and you'll be supporting the Uneducated Economist in doing that. But those are the 2 books that I would recommend. If you haven't read those, then I would get into those. To be honest, they're the only 2 books that I've ever read on economics. Is the Federal Reserve, The Creature from Jekyll Island, The Second Look at the Federal Reserve, and Cantillon's Essay on Economic Theory. Other than that, it's been a lot of Federal Reserve speeches and documents and information coming directly from the Federal Reserve as of recently. Prior to the last, say 4 years or so, all over the internet, following Peter Schiff and, Jim Rogers, who else? Like, there's a lot of really good guys out there. Dave Morgan, the Silver Guru, really good information there. Doug Casey, and then like my favorite guys more recently, like Brent Johnson, Jeff Snyder, Really good stuff there. Those guys put out some really good things. You know, there's so many good economists out there. I never denied the information, no matter where it was coming from, no matter who was saying it. I didn't care. If they were talking about the economy, if they were talking about money, I would listen. Now, whether or not I believed in or trusted their opinions, that was a whole other story. But I never denied the information, because even if it was stuff that I didn't agree with or didn't like or didn't find useful, occasionally a little nugget of information would come out that I never thought of before, or I didn't really take into consideration. And so it's important, like when you're learning this stuff or just taking it in for the first time or trying to learn, is to not deny the information, right? You don't necessarily have to take it in for, you know, truth or fact or anything like that, but just don't forget about it, right? Because it could possibly come up again in the future and you'd be like, man, I remember that dude said something way back then and now it's starting to make sense. So, all right. Great time hanging out with you, everybody. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.